Welcome to our in-session edition of This Week in Missouri Politics from the state capitol here in Jeff City, joined by the guy kind of at the head of everything, the president of the Missouri State Senate, Caleb Rowden. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be here.
Just to be clear, we're taping this Thursday morning. A lot could happen between what we're talking about now and later.
Yeah.
But let's just say the session ended right now. An amazing list of accomplishments.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we this was a year where we knew there were a couple of big things. The trans issue was a leftover from last year. Some sort of Parents' Bill of Rights was leftover from last year, but there weren't a ton of really high-profile things. There were a lot of things that we cared about, a lot of priorities, but it allowed for some bandwidth to be available for some just stuff that we thought was in the best interest of the state of Missouri. And so, that we can list those things out. Obviously, some of the stuff that happened in the budget, I-70 getting done, and some of those things are huge and generational and impactful. Maybe not partisan, but impactful.
I'll go through that list of stuff.
Yeah.
But first, I've watched this for a while now. I mean, the gray is not dye. It's real inside of my head. But it feels like you were able to lead the Senate back to a more normal, traditional Ron Richard, Mike Kehoe, Tom Dempsey style of Senate.
Yeah, well,
and there's a list of accomplishments to prove that.
That's right. And the Senate is supposed to be hard. It's not supposed to be easy. It's not supposed to be irrational or deeply personal, but it is supposed to be difficult. And so anytime that happens, when people have issues that are related to policy, I applaud that. I'm not going to discourage that, and so we tried to foster that. I think Cindy has done a fantastic job in her role. I think our good cop, bad cop thing works more than it doesn't.
It really has.
Yeah, it's
well. I mean, the proof is in the success.
Yeah, and she and I are very different, right? I'm willing to, explore the nuance, dive into the nuance, put context where it's supposed to be. Cindy's just going to tell you how it is.
Yeah.
The second she realizes that's how it's supposed to be. And so the combination of those two things in those roles, I think, has been, really, really good for the state and for the Senate.
Biggest thing, when you go home to Columbia, you're going to have to feel good about the biggest thing the state could have done. The thing, how many times have you been on my show and we talked about a form of this?
Yeah.
Redoing I-70. Yeah. It's the biggest infrastructure project in the history of the state.
Yeah.
You led the Senate that did that. No matter where you go in life, that's going to have to feel good.
Yeah, and I sent out a tweet the other day that said, when I got elected to the Senate in 2016, I wanted to stabilize Mizzou funding. I wanted to rebuild I-70, and I wanted to get a 70-63 interchange done. All those things are now done or in the process of, everything's funded. We're moving the right direction. That's amazing.
During your time in office, Mizzou was an absolute dumpster fire, and it's went from there.
Yeah.
To I don't know that I've ever in my professional life heard of Mizzou in a better place than it is right now.
It's incredible, and very little. I mean, I've been helpful in getting the money flowing the right way and some of those things, but
they definitely blamed you when it wasn't.
Well, yeah,
you caught
but I mean the engagement of the board, the engagement of Moon, it's just everything is better, right? And they're doing things better, so it's just it's easier to be there too.
There's a new curator that you know pretty well, Mrs. Singfield.
Yeah. Yeah, I think she's going to be awesome. She is one of, if not the smartest people I've ever met in my life. So people know her in a partisan context because of her last name. She's incredible. She's going to do great things.
I think it's nice, too, when you bring somebody in a curator position, she's committed to that college. They've actually put the money where their mouth
is a bunch of times.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it'll be great.
IP reform. I've always felt like the way to make a statute through the referendum process seems fine.
Yeah.
It feels like it should be a little harder to change the Missouri Constitution.
I agree, and as of now, as of this taping, we haven't resolved this entirely in the Senate, but I do think the thing that now has been sent back to us is a good thing for the voters to say, hey, look, we're giving you a chance to decide, should it be harder to amend the Constitution, and should it be harder for us to change a statutory fix if, in fact, they go that route and send the Constitution.
Both seem to make sense, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Tax cut. Always like a tax cut, right?
Yeah, amen. Yeah, we've done it a bunch. I mean, the personal income by the time when I got elected to the House to where we are now or where it's going to be, we've cut 25% of the personal income. I think we cut corporate before I leave. I think we did Social Security this year, and the budget's still growing. I don't always agree with Bill Eigel, but when I do, it's about the reality that we've managed to do all this stuff while still cutting taxes. So it goes against that argument that somehow someday we're going to bankrupt the state.
Score and give it out its wings.
Yeah, I mean it's a goofy argument that hasn't bared out in Missouri, and I think that's a great thing for the people of Missouri.
An issue that to me, the trans kids issue. Mm-hmm. There's almost two parts of it. The part about trans kids playing sports, Man, I just don't know that many people that rationally think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
But you went, and I thought, I could tell when I interviewed you early in session, that was going to happen.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more that's happened that to me is interesting, but where you blocked some of the puberty blockers and things, it's a more nuanced and difficult conversation. I know you're a person of empathy, but do you feel like you made the right decision there?
Yeah, I do. I think that the bill that the Senate passed, that the House passed this week, there is a little bit of unknown here. I think we know, everybody knows what they think they know. The left thinks that this is going to be on par with kind of how the world views the LGBT community, and I think the right thinks that this is not going to become normal. I don't know which way it goes, but for the moment, I think there's a lot that we don't know relative to a 12-year-old or a 14-year-old putting these chemicals in their body. So at a minimum, we said, let's pump the brakes. Let's learn more. This 4-year sunset gives a couple of General Assemblies away the chance to know more and make a more informed.
Isn't that the piece of wisdom in the legislation? Is there's a lot of variables that are unknown. You're going to know more.
That's right.
4 years, boy, that seemed like the piece of wisdom that said, okay, that's the way to do this, and you can make a better decision
And
later.
functionally, it's how we got it out of the Senate without the place blowing up. But also, I do think it's just there isn't. I have my personal opinion. I don't think I'm ever going to be comfortable with kids, being able to change their gender. That's my personal view. But there's my personal view, and then there's the government's role and the government's view in total. And so all those things have to kind of be put into the bowl to get where we got.
You've always been a passionate person on education. When you break down this year, as of Thursday morning, maybe not that many landmark pieces of legislation moving on schools.
Yeah.
You'll be back next year leading the state Senate. What is a reasonable thing that you could accomplish that would improve education?
Yeah, I mean, I still think, and I've said this on your show before, I think there's a way for everybody to win. I do think that, I've talked to Senator Carter about some of her ideas. I think there's a way to say, okay, nobody in any of these conversations is anti-public education. Even the most staunch, at least not anybody that I know. Even the most staunch reformers, nobody's anti-public education. We are pro, in this instance, we are pro parents having some choices, right? And so I think you can do all of the things at once, which is give public schools more opportunities, more autonomy, more ability to say, hey, we would like to go a certain direction and not be so encumbered by what DESE's telling us to do, what the money tells us to do, but also to give parents more choices at the same time. So if both of those things are happening at the same time, then everybody's competing in the right way, and they're competing on a level playing field.
Sometimes feels like it's bound up a little bit. I mean, the innovative part of charter schools, they have a lot of room to innovate and try things.
That's right.
So there's people that are for that, then want public schools to be basically micromanaged from this building and really lock them down with they kind of tie their...
Yeah, and I don't actually think they want them to be locked down. I think the way that you get from where we are now to where we want to be is a little more complicated. And I've told Senator Carter on her particular bill, I think, if you send a bill to the governor that basically takes away all the power from DESE, the entity that he runs.
Bill would give schools the option to opt out.
That's right.
A lot of DESE accredited.
That's right. And so, in that scenario, I would assume the governor vetoes that thing without even really thinking too much about it. But I do think there's a way. I think her underlying motive is right. It's just a matter of, okay, here's where we are. Here's where we want to get to. How can we actually help everybody succeed at the same time? I'm naive enough to think that's possible.
What you were talking about this is the kind of bill that I think you would like because it is innovative. It's different.
It's different.
I mean, I guess people have taken 6 months just to get their head wrapped around what this even could be.
Yeah, it's not the idea that's wrong. I think the process of getting from where we have always been in this kind of protection of the status quo mindset to something different is more complicated.
It adds another layer to the whole argument, though, from charters versus public schools. Now you've got a whole other argument of let's innovate public schools.
Yeah, and I don't even like that argument. I mean, I'm obviously very pro-charter and pro any sort of reform, but I just think the argument that it has to be one or the other, you can't do everything at the same time, it really hurts kids.
Let's talk about something that I think surprised a lot of people. Some postpartum care for women.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to have Medicaid, right? The state said we're going to have a Medicaid program. Yeah. You would think on the list of people that you would want to help would be pregnant women.
I think it's one. I said at the beginning of session it was one of my stated priorities. I got a little bit of heat from that, but I don't think there's anything more pro-life and pro-baby that you can do to stand up and say, hey, we want to protect moms too. Like it really is just a fundamentally, I think if Republicans, could embrace that sort of compassionate mindset relative to the government's role in certain areas. I'm not pro, everybody having health care, and I don't think health care is a right and all these things that the left has embraced. This is different. This is a nuanced view of being able to provide care for moms, especially in instances where they're having, physical issues, mental issues, and emotional issues. Let's stand up for our moms. And in doing so, we're standing up for kids. I want to stand up for kids in every facet that we can.
So you're walking out of a session that, by all accounts, if you would have laid out that list of accomplishments in January, you'd have probably took half in cash, right?
Yeah.
You're wrapping up the session. We'll be wrapped up one way or the other by the time people watch this. That means the campaign season begins. A lot of buzz around your plans. A lot of folks, I'm sure, planned your life out for you. Where are you at in the decision-making process on if folks will see your name on the ballot again?
Yeah, we're still in the decision-making process. I have said, and I've told everybody who we've talked to about this, donors and consultants and everybody else, the family, my family's young and growing. It's the reason why I didn't run for Congress. Now, Congress and a statewide office are obviously very different, but we're going to make the decision that's in the best interest of my family. I'm not going to miss my family growing up, my kids growing up, just because, we have a chance and maybe are the favorite to win some statewide office, whatever that would be. So I'm still interested in serving. I do think I have, something to give. We'll figure out what that is at some point.
Nice place to be in.
I'm not incredibly stressed out about it at this point.
Good timetable.
We'll make a decision. We'll make a decision by the fall for sure.
When you make a decision, I hope you'll come back and talk about it with us here.
You bet.
Again, Missouri Politics.
You bet.
We'll be right back with our opinion maker panel. Ashely, Aune joins us. But first, go to showmissouri.com. This is Missouri one county at a time. Go down and read about Ripley County, right? The Battle of Donna from the Civil War. All things Missouri history at showmissouri.com. We'll be right back after this.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
All throughout Missouri, businesses are struggling to find workers. Childcare challenges are a big reason why. Our kids are losing out too. Through high-impact early childhood investments, we can support the workforce of today and better prepare our workforce of tomorrow. Empower families with the resources they need to succeed. Reduce crime and avoid costly interventions, saving taxpayers money. Together, we can make Missouri the best place to work, raise a family, and be a kid.
We all know puppy mills, cruelty, neglect, and pet store puppies are at high risk for disease, even death. We expect our laws to protect dogs, but now an out-of-state company called Petland is trying to change our state law to enable puppy mill cruelty. We all know it'll hurt the dogs we love. Contact your state legislators. Tell them, protect our dogs. Vote no on the cruelty. Vote no on the harmful puppy mill bill.
Data captured by our state-of-the-art monitors helps us pinpoint the timing and location of severe weather more accurately and respond to trouble more quickly. Ameren, Missouri's investment in smart technologies like this is one way we're improving reliability and restoring power faster than ever. Responding to trouble before trouble hits. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back this week in Missouri Politics Opinion Maker Panel Time. Ashely, Aune, friend of the show. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Donna, Baringer, nice to have you here in the state capitol, where you're actually from.
Yes, I am. Thank you for having me.
Melanie said, first time on the show. Springville, welcome back.
Thank you.
Representing Missouri State, well, I can see.
Absolutely.
And Warren County Warrior, Jeff Myers, thanks for joining the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Let's jump in budget. Something you read a lot about. I mean, it's easier to be the approach chairman when you have money.
Absolutely it is.
But still, I think even for that, I-70 is a big deal. There's a lot of things went on. You had to feel good about it.
Honestly, yes. I think so. I think that at the end of the day, when we look at where the budget's been the last few years, and especially since I've been in the building for the last 3 years, I feel good about the budget. I think that, honestly, at the end of the day, moderates and Democrats win when the Senate passes the budget.
And honestly, when you have money, you can have a long list of accomplishments. But I-70 running through your area, I mean, no matter where you go in life after this, if you just say, I'm done with this summer, you still feel good about the main artery through your hometown, through this state. You're part of rebuilding that.
That was the biggest thing that I had on my list. You may be aware there's a $900 million project going in, beef processing plant right next to 70 on at Forestell, and they're going to run through there 124 trucks a day coming in, that many more going out, and it was something that's sorely needed.
Well, I mean, it's going to be kind of downhill. I mean, when you ran for office, you're like, okay, I'll rebuild I-70. You did that in year one. I mean, what do you do next? I mean,
Well, I got a few things on the list.
peace in the Middle East, where Melanie Stinnett, Springfield seems to do pretty well on that budget. Could be a cattle farmer down there,
Could be. Yeah, I'm really proud of our Springfield folks and our Greene County folks and how they work together on the budget to really bring some money home to make sure that we're targeting our region and making sure we're not forgotten down there in Southwest Missouri.
All right, let me be the negative person here. There's a little concern. You've got a flush budget that, frankly, is money sent from the federal government. You start cutting taxes too much. I mean, just tell people you're going to run this into a deficit and have to make cuts. You keep cutting taxes on one-time money, you can tell some people don't run businesses, right?
I can tell you that as a pragmatist that it's so nice to be having all this money to spend, but we're doing it on programming versus infrastructure. And when you have excess funds, it should always go to the items that you can't afford to fix when you're broke. And when we go into this recession, in 2 years, they're going to be sitting here on the House floor and in the Senate going, we're going to have to start cutting because we cannot fund what we put in place now.
You're one of the rare Republicans that actually owns a business. It does got to be a little concerning, though. It's great to cut taxes, but it's probably not the best if you're telling people, well, this isn't, we have all this money, but there's going to be a time where if you keep doing this, you will run into a deficit in probably 2-3 years, right?
Sure, I think it's something that we have to keep an eye on, and I think that our group over in the House and the budget are looking at that constantly and making sure that we do things in a smart way, and I think they'll continue to do that.
Wrap it up. I mean, you probably have another 2 or 3 years of good budgets, but when the bad times come, then they always do, then it gets a lot tighter. Maybe Democrats won't like the budget so much then, right?
Maybe not. Honestly, you're talking to someone who grew up in Kansas. I know what happened during Brownback's reign, and I'm terrified that we're going to move in that direction here in Missouri.
Donna Baringer, I love talking to you because you are pragmatic, but you're a compassionate person. The House passed a bill regarding trans kids. It feels to me like there's two parts of this. The parts about sports, boy, you don't find that many people that really that aren't for separating that. But then you get into some of this other stuff. And it seems like there's a lot of unknowns about every angle of it.
Yes. This is an emotional issue, and it's also a very personal issue. And so no one ever wants someone to come in and tell them how they should raise their child. Anytime you've said to someone, you can do this or this, or not this with your child, they would just jump all over you.
Yeah.
But we're doing it with this transgender legislation, and it breaks my heart because it's not that many children it impacts, but it's impacting our state in a big way when it comes to tourism and how we look. We made the Washington Post 10 minutes after that happened.
I saw this MSNBC ad where this woman was talking about, well, it takes a community to raise a child. We all have a stake in this. And this guy said it to me as a Republican. He's like, no, you don't. It's my kid. But then if your kid's trans, no, it is our job to raise your kid. It's such a hypocrisy in the whole thing.
Parents' Bill of Rights for education, but we're taking parents' rights away when it comes to medical decisions. I don't know how you square the two.
Jeff, it seems to me, I personally know one person who's trans, who I met as an adult. I think it's hard for me to understand and get my head around the entire concept, frankly, without knowing more people. I think most folks, probably in Warren County, they may not know anyone personally that's trans.
Well, actually,
it makes it hard.
The trend is growing. There are folks that are coming out as trans all over the place.
Will views change as that changes, as people actually know? I watched in Poplar Bluff. I only knew one person that was openly gay. Now there's Benny, and my view is a little different because it wasn't that big a deal.
Well, I think the point that I would like to make on it, and then sitting on the General Laws Committee, we heard all 9 hours of testimony.
You earned your $30,000.
But I also heard on the backside, you get a lot of emails, and I heard a lot of folks from the LGB community. They're really upset about the fact that T is taken over. And in their words, that they're transing the gay away. So you have kids that are confused. 14, 13 is a tough age for everybody. It was for me. I'm sure maybe everybody else got through unscathed, but it's a tough part. And so when you end up making a life decision, a life-altering decision, that in a way, for my folks, it just doesn't, logic isn't there. I can't wish myself to be a different sex. Biology takes over. The day I stop cross-sex hormones, I go back to being a man. And so that's where it came for me. And this was something I was really passionate about. If you're 18, do whatever you want. I don't care. But wait until then before you start making major medical decisions and not stepping on the rights of the parents to do that. But there's guidelines for what children can do and can't do all up and down our laws. And this is just one of them, I think, that we need to have in place because it's so important and it's taking off like wildfire.
Well, I think the piece of wisdom in the thing seemed like you did it for 4 years only. So very little is known medically about these things. Both sides are experts, but really, when you really push them, nobody knows a lot. This is something that's going to be, it's a topic of conversation. People are going to be studying this immensely. I would say they probably know a lot more than they did 4 years ago. But the wisdom of the whole thing was, this is a 4-year bill. You get to revisit it in 4 years. I'm sure everyone's thrilled to do that, but 4 years from now, you can take another look at it, right?
Sure. And I think we do that with a lot of different bills. You see sunsets in a lot of different areas. And so that's a way for us to say, let's put the pause button on for now, take a look at it again in 4 years and see where things are at.
Do you think it is? I mean, you talked about the LGB and all that. I do believe people, once you know someone that's gay, when you don't, people are afraid of things that are unknown. But once you know someone that's gay, it's like, oh, okay, who cares? So what's Clyde's gay now? It doesn't matter. Maybe with trans people, it might be the same way, and people view it differently the more they actually personally know someone.
I absolutely believe that. One of my favorite quotes in the entire world, and I say it almost weekly, is from Maya Angelou, when we know better, we do better. And I genuinely think that the more folks who are out and proud about who they are and living their lives in our communities and showing us who they are and that they are good people worthy of love and acceptance, that our communities are going to embrace them. I just think that it's going to take time, the same way it's taken time to accept interracial marriage or gay marriage. There are things in our society that as we progress as a society, we can do better for them and we can bring them in. And I think that that's an opportunity we'll have.
I have a brief story. I actually, when I was an alderman in the state of St. Louis, I had a transgender who worked for me for 2 years, came to all the neighborhood meetings with me, worked together. I never told one person, and no one ever knew for 2 years.
That is a great story. Now I very much want to know this person because that's awesome. I mean, but I remember it was in St. Louis. They started with allowing gay people to get married, and frankly, where I'm from was aghast. It was a terrible thing. It was in society. I don't think anybody in Pop-Up notices now or cares. It just didn't matter. It was this enormous thing that was talked about. And now I don't know anybody that even notices or brings it up. It's just, okay, whatever, do what you want.
Right. And like you said, when it happens with a family member, you start to change your attitude. I met a cousin in 1974, and he had brought his boyfriend to our family reunion. And I didn't think anything of it from then, and I've never thought anything ever of it.
Yeah, I think in 1974 in Poplar Blood, people would have thought something of it.
Yeah.
But in 2024, it doesn't even matter at all.
Sorry.
Let's talk about schools. Lots of talk on schools. The House passed a product. The session as we do, this is Thursday morning, so things could change. It felt like the open enrollment bill, Brad Paula did. He worked very hard on that.
Very.
Got through the House, which was quite an accomplishment.
It was.
And it was essentially that you could, if somebody had Parkville had extra seats and they wanted to sell them, they could sell them and somebody could take an extra seat and switch schools. Got common sense, but it sort of got wrapped up in the bigger fight over the charter school and all that. May not happen. Does that come back next year?
I think we're going to keep seeing iterations of it. Absolutely. I think it is a priority on the other side of the aisle, but I definitely think it's dead this year.
It was interesting. A lot of talk, a lot of motion early in the House, and then kind of went up in flames this week in the Senate.
Well, anyone who's asking me about open enrollment, I'll tell them what open enrollment is. Look what happened to the city of St. Louis when we did the DSEG program, when we started shuffling the kids everywhere, the county, other side of the city. That's what will happen with open enrollment. You will destroy the neighborhood schools and the public schools.
What do you think? I mean, it was interesting to me to watch. I have a high regard for Brad Pollitt. Worked very hard on his bill. Moved it through the House. Almost got a little hijacked a little bit in the Senate. Ended up, I think her senator had a few thoughts on it this week, and nothing ended up happening. Open enrollment, I assume, comes back, right?
I don't see it not going away. There's just too much there's such a push to get it through that
It was funny, though. You could tell. I mean, I think, the Warrens and Warriors might be okay, but I think those suburban folks are coming for the Wright City Wildcats.
it wasn't necessarily a popular vote for me, but when they changed to 3%, you don't need a scorecard from DESE to tell you if your school's bad. If you've got more than in my school district's case, more than 100 students wanting to get out, you've got a problem. It gives the superintendent, school board time to address that. It's a slow bleed instead of an arterial bleed. You can get that taken care of.
You feel like now that you're kind of moving past COVID, right? I mean, in Southeast Missouri, we didn't do COVID much, so it didn't take long. But I think people took a fresh look at their schools and got ticked off on some levels. And I'm not sure, school people are pretty regimented, but I think now they're to the point of acceptance of, okay, there's probably some things we could do, which overall might not be bad.
Sure. And when I look at Springfield, we have open enrollment in our borders, and it works well. Our kids are able to move from school to school and make those choices. If it is good inside Springfield, I can't see where it wouldn't be potentially good outside of Springfield. I think people would come into Springfield for some of the programs that we have. I think some people would go outside of Springfield for some of the smaller schools for different reasons. And so I think there's a lot of positives to it.
Interesting. Next year, does this actually happen? Give me a prediction.
Can't tell. I'm new.
You rebuilt I-70 in a year. You can't play the new card. What happens next year?
I think we'll do it.
What happens?
I don't want it to happen.
What happens?
24 is an election year. Literally anything could happen.
That is interesting. I like that. But we're about to get kicked off the air on this week. So what? Who won the week?
Working mothers in Missouri won the week. We TAFP'd postpartum and a benefits cliff. And man, I am so proud of the work that has been done. I know that you did some serious work on that this year, and I'm so grateful for that. And man,
I think resident Missourians would be shocked that wasn't a thing before.
Absolutely.
Who won the week?
The citizens of the city of St. Louis, because we're going to have a new circuit attorney, and on the horizon, I hope our crime is going to go down and less murders.
If I didn't love you, I would try to ask you who you're supporting, who you want for it. But I'm going to ask who won the week.
Individuals with developmental and other disabilities with the Ticket to Work legislation that increases their opportunity to work in competitive integrated employment.
But now that people expect you to pass a bunch of bills every year, I mean, you have a long summer, people driving to Springfield wanting you to carry stuff.
Sounds good.
Who won the week?
Women's sports.
Yeah, I just think in reality, there's not a coffee shop in Missouri where that didn't make sense. Right?
I agree.
I got one. I'm going to say Brad Pollitt. Nobody took more serious time and worked hard on a piece of legislation than Brad did. Looks like it may not happen, but that doesn't mean a serious person do some serious work. Stick around. Justice and Journalism with Judge Mike Carter. He's bringing in the guys that make tires and car guys. It's going to be great. Just listen to him talk. It'll be funny. And we'll see you back here next week for our post-session edition of This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics is sponsored by the Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, Ameren, Spire, and the United Electric Cooperative.